one of the volunteers here for the Entrepreneur Meetup. And we have a special presentation today, but before we get to that, some announcements from Tiffany.
Yeah, I have a few trainings that are coming up and an event coming up I will send information and sign-ups around for. Understanding your cash flow in your business is coming on the 20th. No, sorry, 15th. Thursday the 15th, so in a few weeks. And also strategic planning for your business. So if you have interest in either one of those, the sign-up will be behind the flyer.
And are they free?
Well, nope, there is a cost depending on if you're a Launchpad member or not. So you can see that on there. If you want more information afterwards, let me know, or I can make a copy of that flyer for you. We have another one coming up on the 20th, and that's define your market, so really understanding what your niche and customer base is. Deb McGregor will be doing that one, and that will be here on the 20th at lunch. So there's sign up. And then there's a flyer now for the Hackfest too. So if you have any interest in forming a team, whether you're a professional in the area or just kind of dabble in web development, coding, graphic design, storytelling, project management, you get on a team of 2 to 6 people, and we will link you up with a nonprofit in the area that's looking to improve or get a new, maybe they have no website. So it's a website challenge over a 24-hour period. So there's some details here in the website to get more details and to sign up.
And your skills don't have to be in web programming or website design. They're going to need strategy, storytelling, messaging, all that stuff that goes with creating a fantastic website. So lots of talents are needed.
And if you know of a nonprofit that has a pretty sad website, let them know that they can apply to be selected as one of the websites that gets looked at.
Maybe if you're proposing it, maybe not quite.
Yes. What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
If you're looking for awful websites, it's not a yours.
Are there any other entrepreneur announcements? New people? Are there new people? Are there people joining the Entrepreneur Meetup for the very first time?
Goodness.
Yes! Woohoo! Well, welcome. Great to see you. So what this is a space where we meet every Wednesday and feature a different entrepreneur in the community who wants to talk about their business well, this week is a little special. We get to hear about one of the programs at BSU, but essentially this is a support group for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business owners to have a way to connect with others about challenges that they're experiencing in their business and ways to overcome them, or share celebrations or things that they learned that we can learn from them. Today's speaker is Sachel Josefson. He's in this brightly colored suit. And he's the assistant professor at Bemidji State University, teaching courses at the School of Technology, Art, and Design, or TAD. If you've heard TAD, the TAD program, that's what that is. We'll learn about the unique exhibit design program, the only one in the nation. This is a special gem right here in our own backyard. And if you were at last year's TEDx Bemidji, you would have seen just one example of how the exhibit design talents of Sachel and his students came through for one of our community events. The stage design was done by those guys. So today we're going to learn about the program and the trade show industry, which is an integral marketing piece to many businesses in this region and beyond. So please welcome Sachel.
So I'm going to start off by playing kind of a video that Dan Voss, he works in the College of Business, has put together, and that gives kind of a,
Broadcast studios for ESPN, kiosks at the Olympics, General Motors exhibits at the Detroit Auto Show, and the Super Bowl halftime experience. What do they all have in common? Graduates of Bemidji State University's exhibit design program work for companies on these projects and others like them. To be an exhibit designer is to be a storyteller, blending art, graphic design, 3D design, audio, and video into an engaging brand experience. You have the creativity to be an exhibit designer. We just provide you with the tools and training you need to be successful. The jobs are there. Are you ready to accept the challenge? Learn more about the only bachelor's degree of its kind in the nation by visiting our website at bsutab.com and begin your storytelling experience with a degree in exhibit design.
But what we tell students that come into our program is that it used to be that being an exhibit designer was basically a glorified architect, and now what we do is create experiences. I don't think that video was awesome, so I created a new one yesterday. Do we want to see that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, this is I'm usually sitting in front of. So, one of the things we talk about with experience, and what we do, and if you are...
Just in the middle.
Well, I want to start right at the beginning. We're 1 second and that's too far. So we talk about creating experiences, and one element of creating experience, if any of you do any trade shows, is trying to make it personalized. And so I showed you a video, but you guys kind of felt like outside participants, and that was something that was kind of annoying to me, and so it's important that you kind of draw the people, and so I made a Meetup video, and I was going to change costumes right here, but we're going to run low on time. I have fake cigars and everything. But here it is. Can we make it louder?
Yay, Sam.
Okay, so this is experiential exhibit design. One of the challenges that I face is if this is kind of a metaphor for Bemidji State University, and it's easy to see experiential exhibit design gets lost in the rest of it. And so my name is Sachel Josefson. My first job is being a dad and a husband. My second job is being a professor at the university. And my third job is I'm a part owner of a company called ProStrain, which is why I come to these meetings. I primarily am trying to glean information as an entrepreneur, but this is an opportunity for me to wear a different suit and talk about being a professor in the TAD school. So within the framework of Bemidji State University, there's Bemidji State University. The TAD school falls under the College of Business, and that's going to be changing. Within the School of Technology, Art, and Design, we have a series of academic pathways. We have engineering technology, construction management, manufacturing pathways, project management, model making, experiential exhibit design, graphic design, and studio arts. Our studio arts program is made up of 5 studios: drawing, painting, ceramics, photography, and printmaking. Today I'm going to focus on experiential exhibit design. And the question is, how did experiential exhibit design start at Bemidji State University? And this is our favorite person, Jim Benson. And when he was president of Bemidji State University and presidents before him, I think the landscape was a little bit different at the university. And he basically would let faculty kind of run wild with ideas, which is commendable, and he has that spirit today. And so this is Kermit Anderson, and in the late 80s he was in Las Vegas, and this is when trade shows started to really kind of gain steam in America. They were much more popular in Europe at the time, and companies were saying, okay, TV's here, the media is here, how can we make sure that we bring people together and make sure that they're having face-to-face interactions? Well, let's have trade shows. So a lot of the big trade shows that you see today started in the 80s. And Kermit went to Las Vegas and went to some of these shows, and he said, you know, somebody has to design all these exhibits in these shows. And with each show, basically an entire city moves into the Chicago McCormick Place. The event happens for 3 to 5 days, and then the entire city either goes to Detroit or Orlando or New Orleans, and then a new city of exhibits moves into Chicago. So the volume of work is tremendous. And so he noticed that and said, we need to start a program in northern Minnesota. It doesn't make any sense. This program should be at UNLV, but it's not. And it's at Bemidji State, and it's an extremely well-known program. And so how professors used to do it back in the day is they would offer a class. And then administration wouldn't know, and then they would offer another class. And they start offering another class. And then before you know it, in the mid-90s, there was an actual academic track or pathway into exhibit design where we were graduating our first kind of students. And the person that after Kermit Anderson, Mark Schmidt, ran the program, and then Bonnie Higgins took over the program about 10 years ago. And I was working in Atlanta, and she called me and she said, Sachel, what do you think about teaching exhibit design? And I was like, I'm like a baby. I'm like 23 years old. What are you talking about? And she said, I think that you and I can do this. And so her and I worked extremely close, and this has been a big part of my life, and Bonnie Higgins and I still work very closely together. This is me, and I'm probably a lot of the professors before me were kind of either building the program or hired, and like Bonnie, she was a graphic design professor, and she was asked to kind of, can you take over the exhibit design program? And I'm probably one of the first professors that was hired to do this. And this is last year I was a cover boy in a magazine called Exhibit City News. which is one of the premier magazines in the exhibit industry. And so what is exhibit design? How many of you do trade shows or know what it, how many of you actively participate in trade shows? Question number one. And then how many of you know what a trade show is? Who doesn't know what a trade show is? Kaylee, do you know what a trade show is? Kaylee Burcham's here, she's one of my students. So one of the primary places where our students go and work is in the trade show industry. And the trade show industry can kind of be broken into multiple different sectors. Let me check my time here. And kind of at the first end, we kind of have the portable pop-up stands. I think that a lot of us see that and understand that. When you go to the Home Sport and Travel Show, you see a lot of these 10 by 10 spaces. And while you only have a limited amount of space, I would argue that you can still create a meaningful experience if you kind of understand and break down what an experience is. And that's one of the things that I do. My research is geared towards the trade show exhibit phenomenon, where I've developed processes for experience, dimensions of experience, and then kind of events. Like, how does an experience happen? You know, first you become aware of it, then you actively engage with it, then there's immersion, then you leave, and then there's a follow-up process. And how can you kind of map the attendee through that? Okay, and so on the one end, kind of banner stands. The good part about the School of Technology, Art and Design is our graphic design program. Students that tend to gravitate more towards the 2D world, this is a great outlet for them because there's a lot of work in the portable display area that regular graphic designers don't get exposed to, and our graphic designers do. And every year I taught at the University of North Dakota's graphic design program. And within the University of North Dakota, they had 3 graphic design programs. So if there was one job, it's super competitive just within the University of North Dakota. And the world itself graduates a tremendous amount of graphic designers every year. And so how can you differentiate yourself from everybody else? And that's one of the things that we have leveraged in our graphic design program, is kind of focusing on large format printing, such as the banner stands. Kind of the pop-up displays. These are the things that you can like put in a box and you like take on an airplane with you. And then when you get there, you like quick set it up. Everything kind of fits into these countertops. This is primarily graphic design center. And one of the questions, or if any of you, we have a tremendous network of with industry, and we have a lot of suppliers that sell stuff like this. And if you ever kind of have questions about who you should go with, it's kind of, this world can be isolating sometimes. Of like, I have to go to this trade show. Like, what do I do? And you feel like on an island somewhere. And you are fortunate that you happen to live in the only town that has the only undergraduate exhibit design program in the nation, and one of the few in the world. And so I ask you to leverage that, and let's work together. Modular displays. This is kind of a display that can get bigger. This is a 10 by 20 inline exhibit, but you can see how this could easily break down into a 10 by 10 if you only had a 10 by 10 space. Rental exhibits. This is kind of something that is where the industry is moving into. When I did my master's work, I studied sustainability, and I had a huge problem with the trade show industry because it was so wasteful. They did a lot of what are called build and burn trade shows, where they would build exhibits, and then when the show was over, like a bulldozer would come through and just and like just throw it all away. And I was like, what? What is happening here? Like, there's like homeless people all over the place. Can't we just throw them in an exhibit or something? But what ended up happening was there were companies out there that recognized that, and there are now a lot of modular systems that you can build an exhibit with and take it down, and they can put up, using those same parts, can build another exhibit for another company. And that's something that we used as a student project, and we work with a company called B Matrix out of Atlanta. They do a design competition with us, and most of the assignments that we do in the School of Technology, Art and Design are generated by industry members. Ray, would you agree? Kaylee's here to keep me honest. This is an example of the B Matrix system. This is their exhibit at EuroShop in Dusseldorf, Germany for a trade show called EuroShop. We understand that we lack access to those types of experiences, so it's very important that our students get out and experience the world. And it's hard to develop and design experiences if you haven't had very many. And so it's important that our students get out. So in the fall, we take a group of students to Chicago. We took 45 students in a charter bus for 5 days. And in the spring, we go to Las Vegas. We take about 20 to 25. And then every 3 years, we go to Dusseldorf, Germany for EuroShop. It's a show that's only every 3 years. And you'll kind of notice that trade shows happen or occur as fast as like the innovation cycle happens. So like fashion, the innovation cycle is like super fast. So they'll have 4 huge shows a year, 1 for each season. And retail environments and is a much slower, has a much slower innovation cycle. So they have a show every 3 years. ConExpo is a show for like heavy equipment. I designed the Dynapack exhibit, if you've ever seen those big loaders. And that show is every 3 years. Okay, so kind of give you an example. And then here's an example of kind of custom exhibits. So we kind of have this progression within the trade show exhibit world. This is one of the exhibits that one of our previous grads designed, Mackenzie Kaplan. She's actually from Bemidji, and she works in Chicago for a company called 3D Exhibits. Here's kind of a fun example. This was in the video. The automotive industry is absolutely incredible when it comes to exhibits. The company I worked for in Las Vegas and Atlanta, Georgia, they did General Motors. They do General Motors, they do Porsche, they do Mini Cooper, but General Motors spends over $50 million a year on their trade show exhibit. To give you an example of the type of money that we're talking about. So on the one hand, we have the like banner stands, you know, where you're pissed if you have to spend $250. You're like, I know I can get it cheaper. You know, you're like shopping. You know, I know I can get it cheaper. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have just crazy, wild experiences. And our program and the companies that are hiring our students now are becoming increasingly experiential, and they're trying to separate themselves by design, and because they don't want to compete with Amazon and banner stands. And what they're basically selling is their intellectual property and their capabilities in being able to build. So this is a Jeep exhibit. You can see that basically in part of the trade show hall, pretend this is about the size of a football field. They're literally building tracks, and you get to like, part of the attendee experience is they have drivers, and you get to get in and ride around in a Jeep, and you get to go up and over a bridge, and it's just really kind of cool. Outside of this, they have professional drivers that do that drifting, where the car goes like craziness, and you can ride along. If you stand in line for like 3 hours, you can sit inside a Corvette or a Mustang and kind of do that, and it's almost like going to Valley Fair if you're a car enthusiast. I don't want to say like a manly man that loves NASCAR, because everybody can love this. Okay, I want to make this a kind of a conversation, so I just kind of want to get through this. I had a video of the Chrysler exhibit. Raise your hand if you want to see it. Raise your hand if you want to move on. Okay, we'll watch it. Back over here.
Being in the auto show game means you can never sit idle, even when the shows themselves sometimes seem formulaic and routine. It's why we spend every year researching the driving force behind consumer engagement. We've learned that attendees' wants and needs shift without warning. Bucking tradition, in recent years, audiences no longer rank seeing or learning about new vehicles as the reason to attend. They show up craving entertainment, a performance. And after maintaining a subdued presence at past shows, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles was keen to make a bold statement at the 2016 Detroit Auto Show. 10 months in the making, GPJ and Spinifex turned the auto show
So we have one
on its head.
previous grad that works for George P.
Experience
and then one of the senior designers at George P. comes every other year or so and teaches a 3-day workshop. And he's an absolutely incredible 3D modeler, and so he basically teaches our students that they'll do it.
Designed to immerse, inspire, and entertain, the action-packed 18-minute display celebrated the uniqueness of each brand, whilst reinforcing the connectedness of the FCA group. 7 brands, 70 vehicles, a space larger than a football field, 3 times the intensity of a stadium rock concert. This unprecedented explosion of light, sound, and media dominated Detroit and sent ripples across the automotive industry, setting a new benchmark in audience engagement while shining a big bright light on FCA. Standing out in the auto show crowd is no easy feat. Yet with a fresh approach and a mesmerizing environment, you can give the people what they want and put the show back in auto show.
So you can see how complex they can get. Whoa, don't do this to me. Okay, we're back on track. So we kind of understand the difference in the progression. One of the things that I struggle with is we have more companies that want to hire our students than we have students available.
That's awesome.
And it's awesome, but we have more and more companies on this end of the spectrum where we have had a student be involved in the halftime show, the Super Bowl, and just like things that are pretty, I would just say prestigious. And there are companies that basically fight over students that are, we may have 3 students of that caliber, and companies will fight over those 3 students, and when those 3 students are taken up, the rest of the students will go somewhere else because they'll go into one of the other facets of the industry, because there are a huge variance of companies, and everybody will find a home. But for Kaylee, for example, she went to Alex Tech for 2 years, and she's coming here and she's going to spend 3 years here, and she could be done at the end of next year. But she's really good. And she has said, yes, I could get a job after next year, and she could. But she wants to stay that extra year, and she wants to fight for jobs like George P. George P. used to never hire designers out of college. Zarnowski, where I worked, never hired students out of college. They only hired designers that had experience and that have proven themselves at another company. And that's changing because we're doing such a good job, which is awesome. So another area other than trade shows is events. We have educational events, corporate events, meetings, expos, trade shows, conferences. I say trade shows again because a lot of students will end up leaving and working for a company called like Freeman, and they're a show organizer. And so they don't only design exhibits, they design the event itself. And then reception counters, and if you've ever been to a larger show, there's a lot that goes into each one of the show designs. And sporting events, the Super Bowl, we have a company in Minneapolis that we have a few students at that it's called Star, and the creative director graduated from our program, and they were in charge of designing like a Hilton stay. And maybe you heard about it in the news. You can win, and the night before you can stay in like a Hilton room at the U.S. Bank Stadium. And so they were involved not only in the room design and build, but also there was an exhibit outside of it. Another sporting event, things that we get involved in. This was a project that I worked on with the Hockey Day Minnesota group, and we had 2 students work with me to build a gigantic jersey for Paul Bunyan, go in the middle of the night and dress him, because it's illegal, and take a bunch of footage, and then undress him, and we just made sure that the police were at a donut shop on the other side of town.
And you made the paper the next day.
Yeah, like they know, and they showed it during the Wild game. They're like, "How did you do that?" And they're like, "Oh, a gentleman named Sachel Josefson." I'm denying that. So concerts and festivals. The company I worked for was involved in designing Sheryl Crow's concert stage, and we had a project manager that I'm really good friends with. Traveled around with Sheryl Crow during her tour, and like helped put up the event and take it down. And so this kind of notion of temporary architecture is really our fit. Does that make sense? We do kind of do some permanent installations like corporate lobby spaces, but our niche in the world is something that would come in, move in for a few days or a few months, and then go away. And we would use a system that our students learn how to build with to design it. And again, the build of it is just one of the facets. The experience is what I'm trying to really focus on and get the concept and the experience down, and then we design a structure that better facilitates that experience. Does that make sense? Here I had a EDC is a gigantic festival that some of my students are obsessed with. There's something called Tomorrowland, which is in Belgium. Raise your hand if you've heard of it. AJ, you're not allowed to go there until you're older. I'm just going to play a quick snap of it. So you can see that so this is called Tomorrowland. It's a huge event, and that somebody has to have designed, and millions of dollars have gone into it. Tens of millions. This is what TED Talk or TEDx Bemidji is going to be like in a few years. This is why I say this to people will go to this event, and it's a week long. Okay, so that's kind of an example of a festival that is kind of unique and fun. EDC is another event that is, it happens in America, so if you get to Belgium, strongly suggest going to EDC. I asked the students, I'm like, am I too old for this? Like, is this something? But I guess like people Jim's age go. Jim is just about the right age. He has to dress up though and wear a costume. So. Broadcast studios, this was shown in the splash video. This was a company called Creative Dimensions. We have 2 students that work there in Connecticut. They do a lot of work for ESPN. They also design the PGA Tour events. So again, think about the PGA golf tournaments, and there's signage everywhere, and somebody has to have designed that. in something that we don't even think about. And again, Joel Roy, he's a good friend of mine. We have the connections to like get students there. Jim Dixon, he was a non-traditional student. He was a computer science student, and he was like, I do not want to do this. Walked through our building and said, I want to do this. I don't really have an art background. He spent 4 years in our program. He truly believed in it. And he is one of the students that works in Connecticut. And so we kind of put him through the machine, and he came out and he's an incredible, he works hard and he's good in the software and he's a great designer. And he works for this company. When you watch, I'm trying to like find image specific to like Super Bowl, but kind of I know we're sad too. But, so this, the desks that you see on ESPN and on Sunday, if you see a desk like this is called the Versa desk, and we have students that have designed that. And so it's crazy to think, if you watch baseball tonight, Creative Dimensions was involved in designing and building that stage, or that studio space. Permanent installations, this is in US Bank Stadium, and the company Star was involved in building that. Permanent installations also include corporate lobby spaces. Here's an example of a previous student's design for Valspar, which is in Minneapolis. They have this really old building right across from, I believe, US Bank Stadium, and they wanted to take the old building. All of these pillars needed to stay because it held the building up, and so how can we design it in a way that is cohesive and really more contemporary. Museums, science centers, visitor centers. This is the Beltrami Historical Society. We have a student currently working with them right now because Bemidji State has their centennial next year. Is this true? And so she's working with them on designing and building an exhibit, okay? Which is kind of fun. Point of purchase displays, when you're like walking in Home Depot and like you run into something in the aisle, that's a point of purchase display. Something exhibit designers also do. The Crayola experience at the Mall of America. Companies are trying to figure out a way to get people off their butts and off their computers and into spaces. And so a company like Crayola, they have the Crayola experience, which is you pay an admission, $35 to get in, you spend a few hours doing all these really fun activities, and then you basically, the next area within the wayfinding or traffic flow is to go into their store. And they found that their sales have skyrocketed since this. And it's just you have them do something, you get people to identify with your brand, and then you get to, once you get people to identify with your brand, you basically have them hooked and they'll buy their products. Just like John and I with Apple. Right? Yeah. So it's a really awesome, there's a Super Bowl experience this week, and then also Nordstrom's? Yes, Nordstrom's. They're looking at changing their business model, so when you go into a Nordstrom's, you don't see a huge sea of clothes. Rather, you walk in and you get to like interview fashion designers, and you find somebody to be a counselor or a consultant. So maybe that too. And basically they walk around and you try stuff on and you don't buy anything. You say, yeah, I like that, and they'll scan it for you, you pay for it, and they'll ship it to you the next day. So now one of the huge problems with retail spaces is having a huge amount of inventory, and so that cuts that down. And Stitch Fix, one of the problems with that is you basically have people that say that they're your consultant, but you don't know if it's just a bot somewhere, like just being like, blah. They said they like this, they don't like this, and it's not really a human. And so there is this human element that's really important, and I think that that's a really cool idea. That's basically a face-to-face Stitch Fix. And then pop-up retail, this was something when we were in Chicago. I went through this experience. Google doesn't have stores, and so what they do is move into cities and have something for 3 days, You basically stand in line for 3 hours, and then you get to go through this thing for 30 seconds. You ask the Google Mini a question, and either a box of donuts comes out or you get an actual Google Mini. And so it's just a great example. I think that, so one of the things we use this as a case study in one of my classes. We went through it and we said, okay, based on what we know about experience, how did they do? And we basically, by the end of it, we were like, we can do this. Like, we understand enough that we arguably could have done a better job designing this experience than Google did, and they hired one of the top design agencies in the country. And to have my students feel like that, and the students that I went through the experience with, to be like, oh my God, I could design this, and I could do a better job than what they did. Because it was built out of hard panel wood, and it's basically going to go in the garbage. And why? We could have used a system, put it up, made fabric walls, torn it down. We could have been more secure and a better experience. Wayfinding and signage is another area. This probably should have been towards the top, but one of the things Kaylee kind of turned me on to was this American Advertising Award, and everybody knows about this except me, so if everybody in here knows about it, I'm sorry. But we submitted 8 student designs, and 5 of them are winners, and next weekend we get to go to the reception and figure out if they get to move on to the state competition or regionals.
I think it's like more of the state. It's like Minnesota, Wisconsin. Or maybe it is just the state.
So it's kind of like, I equate it to the county fair, like you show your pig, and if you get first prize, you get to take your pig to state, and if you get first prize, you get to go to nationals. And so we have 5 students that are going, we'll just call it state, and it's just a kind of a really cool experience.
Real quick, what are some of the topics that the kids want to design?
So we had one student do an experience for the brewers, and so this would be, so B-Matrix came to us and said, we need to look for creative ways to use our system. And so we want you to use our system and create a retail experience for a sports team that would either be outside their facility or inside their facility. And so she designed an exhibit for the Milwaukee Brewers, and basically each day all the jerseys could come out and be put up, and there were digital displays that could change every game. And so the first day was, let's just say it was the Ryan Braun experience. And you could go in, buy his college jersey, buy his professional jersey, buy hats that were signed by him. And then the next game, tomorrow, it could be the Carlos Gomez experience. So you go in, you get to learn about Carlos Gomez, and you're getting people to get their identity tied to their team. And so if you learn more about Carlos Gomez, you may say, oh, I love him. I didn't know he went to Bemidji State University and played baseball, which isn't true. Nobody's fact checking, fake news, So we have an incredible, so just quick rundown, some things about the program, strong industry partnerships. We have international partnerships where our students design for an international competition. We have national competitions. We're working locally as well. We have students help with the TEDx event. We're currently, the Compass Rose, Hannah, she presented here. She's moving downtown, and our students are working with her to kind of create and design her retail. A third of her store is going to be dedicated to being highly experiential, like kind of Etsy, like the Nordstrom model, but Etsy, a face-to-face place where you can come in and do crafts and build your own stuff and end up paying to build your own stuff, which our students are helping with that. And we're doing a lot of cool stuff. We broke the law and did the Paul Bunyan thing. And so we're always looking for fun projects to help the local community. And we're working on new curriculum. We're working with Gabriel and Kelly, and we understand that designers need to know more about marketing, and marketing people need to know more about design, and because they're just becoming so much more sophisticated. And so I'm working with the marketing department and trying to create a multidisciplinary program and really trying to blur the lines between the real world and academia. It drives me crazy when people talk about the real world. I think they should be the same thing.
Exactly.
Our program is known internationally. In June, I present at a conference, and at that conference, they're basically going to launch Bemidji State as the place in the world to hire students, and so we're probably going to get a lot more international internships and jobs that come out of it, which is really important because we have a lot of international students, and it's becoming harder and harder for them to get jobs in America, and so it'd be nice if we can place them internationally.
Sachel, where will you be presenting?
Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Yeah. Challenges. This is a huge thing that I could basically pose to you guys is, if you didn't know about the exhibit design program before you came in here today, we have students that walk through our building for 4 years, and then at graduation they go, the person they're sitting next to got their degree, and they're like, oh, I didn't even know we had that. You know what I mean? It drives me crazy. We have 3 students from China, and the dad said, oh, I heard you have the second best program in the world. So I'm sending my daughter there to learn exhibit design. And I'm like, first off, I think we're the first. And so we have people in China that hear about our program, but we can't get students in our own building to find out about our program, and it floors me. And so I think that one of the things we could all work on is how do we get the word out and share that story that we have. Geography, we understand, so field trips are important, and I think that I'm done talking. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions.
We have like 7 minutes for questions.
I can show more
Really
videos and
fun,
do dances up here.
Yeah.
I know I've already asked like 3 questions, but I gotta ask you this one and then I'll shut up. A lot of what you're talking about in terms of like working in the industry has to do with like concepts to do with learning sociology about people, crowd design, crowd behavior, and that sort of thing. You know, you talked about linkages obviously with business, and then you pull the art program into the design program. So do you have linkages then? What kind of linkages in the Live Ed area are you pulling in, the psych, the sociology, that kind of stuff?
So we're working with the psychology department because one of the professors really has a fascination with human, there's a word for it, but basically how humans interact with one another. And he wants to teach a class for our design students. And again, our partnerships with marketing. But I think that that's something that we need to work on. And how do we get LibEds to be meaningful where they're not just taking classes for the sake of taking classes? And if we feel like our students are doing that, one of the approaches we're taking is we're just offering more LibEds. This was a great advice that I got from one of my mentors, I can read his names, but he basically said, if those classes aren't working, create your own classes that will work. You know what I mean? And so those are things it's just a partnership.
Yeah.
So as a business owner, so I'm looking forward, I have something that's in the works, but this would be like, how do I find somebody to help me design this, to make this, what in my case is a game, be more of an experience? How do
Absolutely.
I find somebody?
Yeah, so we basically could use it as a class assignment. So we build escape rooms, and we're having what's called Mad Day in about 2 weeks. And so they asked me, can you design an experience for high school kids that are coming in here? And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, let's design and create our own escape room. And so what we've done is there's like an Enigma machine that you can buy them, and they're like this big. And I'm like, we're making one like the size of a door. So it's like, and then like all these like gears move, and it's going to be incredible. But when it's done, I was wondering if you wanted it or like, but I don't know if my wife will let me put it in my house.
The world's weirdest garage sale.
Yeah, but it's incredible. But that's a good fit for us. This notion of escape room. We have students that love it. We have students that kind of are like student athletes. When we put them in working on trade shows, it's highly competitive. There's one winner, and there are 5 companies working on this one project. And some of our students get a little intimidated by that competition, but our student athletes are like, "Oh, let's bring it on! Like we're competing!" Like,
are there like there's marketing and there's you can go to a marketing place and pay them to do marketing and that sort of thing. Is this part of that, or are there separate? If I want to find one, how do I
find what? A student?
Well,
or
in this
a project?
case, yes, because I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
But if any small business, if they go, this would be a perfect thing for, and I'll talk to dog show organizers as well, because you would not believe that entire industry is portable. And it's all a trade show every single weekend in a different place.
And that's a huge, and
they don't
one of the things I'm spending a lot of time on is going out and finding Kaylee's. She is a tremendous designer. She came in as a tremendous designer, and I don't want, I'm by no means trying to be disrespectful or anything, but to some degree, what you get, the raw material that you start with, if Kaylee comes in really talented and I get 3 years with her, I'm so confident that the top companies in the country are going to be fighting over her. We had a student last year that had 9 job offers. She narrowed it down to 2, and she basically said, "I have it narrowed down to 2. This is what I'm offering you. You take it or leave it, or I'm going to work for this company." And they said, "We'll take it, and we'll give you season tickets to the Atlanta Falcons." And so, it's crazy that our students there's a little bit of snobbery going on in the program, which I do not like. But students are like, "Oh, I don't think I want to work for them." You know what I mean? And whereas I was like, "I'll take what I can get."
So how many of you here are hearing about this program for the first time today?
Well,
That's awesome. To now be able to experience what's been going on in Bemidji, and it is this hidden gem that a lot of people don't know about, and it's what I love about Bemidji in general. There are gems like this in our community, and it's really fun to have a format like this to be able to hear about what's going on and how the community shines. Yes, Jim?
I don't know if any of you have seen the Celine Dion show in Las Vegas, but they built her $100 million theater for a 10-year contract. She's still running. My granddaughter was just out there, so she's still going way beyond the 10 years. But it's unbelievable the experience you have in the show. There's a series of steps on the stage, and she's about this tall up there. And she comes walking down singing her first song, but before it's over, it cost a couple $100 a ticket, I think. But all of a sudden, this dove flies right by my ear, so close that you just react like this. And there's doves coming down from all this, and they fly right on by the stage and go out the back. It's like honking great.
and so that's a challenge. Is when we think about the university's strategic plan, it's very localized and it's focusing on what's happening in northern Minnesota. But we have this program that's really international, and a lot of our students end up all over, and that's something we're proud of, but we want to make sure that the local community itself can also benefit from this. We're working with Mike on a tiny home project where design students designed it, the engineering students will make sure it stands up, our construction students will be constructing it, and our project management students are managing the project. And that's an example of a project that we're trying to get all these students, not group projects with students from the same discipline, but how do you get groups with different disciplines and put them together and make them solve the problem.
Are there any barriers to entry for kids that are interested in design? Is this a hard program to get into? Can anyone get into it?
So everybody's allowed into the program, but their junior year we have what's called junior screening. So students present their portfolio in front of all the faculty, and the faculty assess where they're at and if they're ready to graduate the following year. And they also do what's called senior screening. So you may be ready, but you didn't do anything your junior year. You'll screen again your senior year. And if we don't feel you're of the caliber that our program warrants, you will basically be asked to, you'll be put on probation, which gives you 6 weeks to reapply, and then you get asked to reapply next year. Because this program, when the students go to Las Vegas and they say, I'm from Bemidji State University, people are like, oh, come in it's like you're saying Harvard, but you're not, you're saying Bemidji State University, and people know where it is when you go to that show, because all the companies that are exhibiting there hire our students, and it's competitive to hire our students. And so it's a great problem to have, but we're also finding creative ways to make sure that we're fulfilling the demand, and that's where the master's program comes in.
Every morning I clean out my computer, so about 6 o'clock this morning I turn it on, and Bud Berger from Bemidji is in Las Vegas this morning at the big show. I don't know if you know Bud, but he and his twin brother started Gander Mountain. They live out here in the woods, and it is unbelievable out there, but he's now sculpting. And he makes life-size moose cast in bronze. I mean,
Oh my God.
unbelievable. A deer jumping over a tree, cast in bronze. And he's showing now because those things sell for a ton. And you never know where the talent is. It's right in our community. And if you ever get a chance to go out to their homes, they're side by side. It's like going through a world museum of wild animals.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, and thank you so much, Sachel, for sharing with us your program. This was amazing.
Yeah, I hope it was good.
Feel free to stick around and ask Sachel questions. Next week, we have Bemidji Area Business Forum.
So the last question they ask is, what can the Bemidji community do for the exhibit design program? Is come and see what we have to do and spread the word. If you have a kid that's going to Bemidji State and wants to go into marketing, say the marketing program is incredible, but think about also getting a degree in double majoring in exhibit design as well. We have a lot of students that do that, and those students are very successful.
Awesome. Thank you.